the committee. Good evening. It is now 5 p.m. I'm Rob Watton, Chair of the Public Safety Committee and Committee of the Whole meeting this evening. And I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is by, unless there is any objection, we're accepting a absence, an excused absence for Councilmember Christensen. And also present this evening is Councilmember Dr. Cotton and our trusty city clerk, Gretchen. Thank you very much. Next order of business is the approval of the agenda. Councilmember Cotton, do you have any changes to tonight's agenda?
I have no changes.
Okay, thank you very much. Stands as presented. Public comment. This moment we give the opportunity for those that are present in the council to come forward with matters concerning public safety or whether or not those items are on the agenda. And I do not see anyone in the audience joining us. So I assume that we will close the public comment section. If you happen to be watching online, you can always submit those to the city clerk or myself, and we'll make sure that those are included. And the city clerk has deemed that we have not received any. Correct. So hearing that, we will move on to the minutes. The minutes are included in the packet. Councilmember Cotton, do you have any changes to the minutes?
I have none.
All right, we will accept the minutes as presented. Then we will move on to the next thing, the fire department's second quarter 2024 accreditation report. And that would be Chief Bailey presenting, and perhaps a recap as well for the accreditation. We've already gone through the accreditation. This is merely the second quarter.
Yeah, my computer still isn't coming up yet, so I can show it on my screen.
Jimmy, would
working on it.
Would you be able to bring it up on your screen, or? They're all in suspense.
Yeah, I was trying to join the webinar and it's not letting me. Up, there we go. Just started. Okay, so I should be able to share my screen here. Hey, look at that. Okay, so this is just the quarterly report that we normally do every couple of months. This is just part of our accreditation. This is to let you know where we're at, kind of keep track of a few things. So I'm just going to go through and talk about it. This was included in your packet. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. But otherwise, we're just going to hit some of the things that I think are important to point out. I want to start off with just talking about the strategic plan, because the first section on here is our work plan. A lot of the stuff on here is now paused because we're waiting for that strategic plan. And I believe I've mentioned it at council, but just to make sure that everybody's on board with where we're going, is we do have a new date for the team to come back out. Not the team for accreditation, the team, the vendors we have for doing the strategic plan. They're going to be coming out October 7th, 8th, and 9th and doing the department portion of the program. They're going to have a draft to us by the end of October. And the goal is to have that draft reviewed, approved, and bring it to the council that last meeting in December. Well, the first meeting in December, the last meeting of the year for the council. That's the goal, as long as everything works out right, is to bring the strategic plan for full approval to the council at December 9th meeting. So that's where we're going with the new strategic plan. That covers a lot of, like I said, that covers a lot of the goals there, because most of those are ones that we're not going to accomplish, and we're waiting for the new plan, the new direction You know, I told the vendors that we want to have that for sure by the end of the year, so we could start fresh with next year. The next one on here that I just want to point out are responses for the year, where we're at. As you can see on there, you know, we're down just a tad, based when you look at our overall, but when you look at the numbers from this time, August 18th of last year, we were at 978 calls for the year. This year we're at 1,067. So we're ahead of where we were last year. I mean, it has a chance to kind of balance out, but they're not going down anytime soon. So we're still kind of trajecting upwards. And as we go through the year, I don't expect much to change, but we're probably going to end up right around where we were last year, if not a little bit more, based on our numbers as to where we are right now. Usually the summer months, you can see by the graph there, we're not quite, this is for the second quarter. We're not quite into the July, August like we are now, but our numbers up for July and August are up quite a bit, like it normally is in the summertime. The next one on there is just looking at the incident types, and really, you know, this stays pretty normal throughout the year. It doesn't change much. As you can see by the percentages, our EMS numbers down a little bit, and some of our false alarm calls are up. And I think a lot of that has to do with the canceled calls that we have going to North Bend. A lot of times we're sent to North Bend and then we're canceled because one of their units clears and is able to come up on the air. So that accounts for some of those changes between the false alarms and the good, both false alarm and good intent calls cover those type of instances. Other than that, we stay pretty similar with where we are, the type of call. And then looking down here at the mutual aid, you can see what we did last year for mutual aid. And then what we're doing this year, again, the aid given is down just slightly. The aid received is up slightly. So that means we're having them come into the city just a little bit more. And one thing, if you remember, I added new for this year was this, and I think this is a more important chart to look at. And this talks about, it actually breaks it down as to where we get our mutual aid from. So you can see there for the second quarter, it went down just a little bit, but you can see how often we go to North Bend, how often we go to Fall City, and then others is just like Bellevue, Redmond would account for the pass if we go to one of those. So that's what would be encompassed in the other section. And then aid received, that's how many times they come into the city. So we had East Side Fire and Rescue 37 times, Fall City 18, and then the other 2. And then I put down at the bottom large incidences just to kind of give you an idea. You can see for the first quarter, the large incidences, that means more than one unit or more than one department. So that would be the fires, the big car accidents. In the first quarter, that happened 10 times. In the second quarter, it only happened once. So it really varies based on the type of call we need. And I think that one was just the fire that we had, the fire downtown. So that accounted, that one big call was the one that you saw there in the second quarter.
So Chief, would it be possible, because you probably have the numbers already, to break out the number of incidents that are related to the Salish Lodge and outside of the city, so that we could, or those that are occurring that are not within our jurisdiction? Does that make sense?
So yeah, I can break it out specifically per address. So we have done those analysis for the mayor already regarding calls to the Salish, calls to the casino, or calls to the tribe property. So if there's a certain call, you know, if there's a specific address, I can look at it. I can look at that specific address. So those numbers are available that I've provided to administration before for the Salish and the tribe properties. But if there's anything else besides those that you're looking for, I can break it out by location, you know, specific address.
Because I would imagine they're not fire calls, they're aid calls.
At which
at either the casino or
the majority, and I'm just talking, you know, I'm just giving my you know, like I said, the numbers are there, but I would say the majority of the calls to the casino are going to be of the medical variety, or maybe a false alarm, like an automatic fire alarm. Most of the calls to the Salish are pretty much the same. We don't go there as much as we used to. 5-6 years ago, they put in a new alarm system. So we don't go there too often for automatic fire alarms. They also have a pre-action system to where if a fire alarm goes off, they have like 5 minutes to make sure, for a fault, to cover those false alarms before it dumps the building. So we don't go there very often for fire alarms, a couple times a year. Most of our calls directly to the Salish, not the property, but the actual hotel are medical calls.
Thank you.
The next one we want to point out here, and again, this is just something that I wanted to, as we do this, we make little tweaks on it, make it a little bit better. And the same as I talked with when I went over the annual report with the council last week, I believe, as I talked about the performance measures and the numbers here in the city. So originally the numbers for this report just did the whole department. Now I've really narrowed it down just to the city, because that's really what we're looking at. We shouldn't be counting our mutual aid when we're talking about our performance numbers, our turnout times, and our times. So you'll notice if you compare this to some of the earlier ones, the numbers are going to be a lot lower, because I made that change for this one. So I added there where it says within the city, and you can see down here at the bottom, it talks about, you can see our numbers there. We are slightly up this year. We're at 148, as opposed to where we were for turnout times, 134, 135 earlier in the year. And like I just said at the council meeting the other night, I attribute that to some of the mixed crews, but we're working on it. We're talking about it, and I'm hoping to get that number back down by the end of the year. Because really, turnout time is the only thing that we really have the ability to change. We can't drive faster to the calls. We can't change the locations of the fire stations easily. The amount of time it takes us to get out the door is really the only thing that we can change. So we're going to keep working on that one for the end of the year. Hopefully get that number back down into the 30s, the 130s. And then also it shows our travel time. And again, this was broken down to just the city. And you can see there at the bottom, it has our average response time for the city responses. And it's down there where we'd like to see it. It's, actually lower than it has been the last couple of years. After that, we go into the annual inspections. There's really no change this year with our inspections. It's pretty typical. The guys get to them when they can. And it's the same common violations you see the most, or the fire extinguishers usually are out of date. And then also the egress happens to be that maybe they have a doorway blocked by boxes, or maybe the fire alarm panel is blocked by boxes. So those are the most common that we see and take for the biggest chunk. After that, you're going to get electrical. Usually it's having an extension cord where they're not supposed to. And then the last one is the property lost and saved. And if you had a chance to look at it, it had the one fire on it. And like I said to the council, it changes quite a bit based on the fire. So unfortunately, that building was mainly a complete loss. When you count for the building itself, they're doing a complete rebuild in there, as well as the furnishings inside. So that's why normally our property saved is about 80 to 90%. Unfortunately, we're down there because of that one fire. But again, it's based on that one fire, and I think the win and takeaway from that is nobody was hurt, and we were able to keep it to that one building. Unfortunate for those building owners, and we hate that it affected those business owners. But it was the one location. It didn't take out the whole downtown area. So I think that's the thing we focus on that one is, and it's going to be rebuilt. It's going to be better than it was. Hopefully our building inspectors working on getting it some of the systems in it, fire alarm systems, things like that. So it's going to be better. But unfortunately, yeah, that was the big loss that we had in the city. That kind of covers everything that we have in the report. So is there any questions on anything I went over tonight?
So Chief, on a couple things. One is, if we go back up to the response time, there were a couple outliers in the report, right here, the travel times.
Okay.
Could you help us understand, the outliers?
The
in
ones
this,
down there,
yeah.
the 12, the ones.
Yeah.
A lot of that, I specifically looked those up when they come in, and a lot of those had to do with, for example, they show up on scene and they don't actually, maybe the scene isn't safe. Maybe it's a police call and we're not allowed to go in yet. So it has to do with how it's coded into the program. So Although they were on scene within 6-7 minutes, they sat there for another 12, waiting before they went in. So that's why it shows up there. But that's also the same reason why we use 90th percentile. So even though it shows it on the table,
Right.
when you go into doing our data, it's not counted in our runtime because using the 90th percentile versus average, it takes out some of those outliers that are way outside the norm. So those big ones in there, I left them in there, but they're also, it's because it's an actual call. We do look at these every month and we not take out, but we fix the ones that are errors.
Yeah.
Maybe they hit the keystroke wrong, they missed the keystroke, and it shows that our response time was 10 minutes when it really should have been 5. We actually go in and make those changes if it was an error in the reporting. But if it's one like this where it's an actual call and it is what it is, then we leave it in there.
Okay, thank you. The second follow-up is the loss report at the bottom, and that's related to, I believe, one structure fire. And in hindsight, I wish I had hindsight as foresight, because that would be a superpower. But in hindsight of that, and knowing that they need to go back and reconstruct everything, are there lessons learned from that, especially in the density of the downtown and older buildings that we should pay closer attention to make sure that we prevent, you're never going to stop every fire, but are there things that lessons that we can take from this?
I think we are doing some things, and like you said, it didn't help us in this situation, but the inspections that we do, I think, are a big help, not only because we're catching a lot of these things and we're having them fix them. The power cords, the smoke detectors, things like that, we are catching those things and having them fix them. So I think that is something preventative that we're doing downtown. So that does help for those areas. Having the crews that also part of those inspections, knowing the buildings, knowing how to, if that would have been a very small fire, we would have been in there pretty quick and we would have had it knocked down because we know the building, we know the area. The fact that it burned for hours before it was, the police were the first ones to notice it, which is great, but it probably burned for a couple hours before we got down there. So it got a good start on us. Being able to have some of those buildings, fire alarm systems in them. Very few or none of the buildings down there have fire alarms because it's not required by code. And you'll have to speak with Cooper about that, John Cooper, the building official. That's one of the things that, like I said, that might come out of this is hopefully in the rebuild, we're going to be able to get some of those systems put in there. But unfortunately, it's not things where you can go in and, if they totally do some remodels, then there are some laws that say that he can go in and say, okay, now you need to bring it up to code and do this, this, and this. But some of those older buildings are just grandfathered in based on their age. So really, the inspections is what we can do, and the education to the building owners to really get on them, which we do, to say, hey, you can't have an extension cord be permanent wiring. You need to do this. You need to have an electrician come in and fix it. That's really our best defense on those type of buildings. And then also the building department, when they do the remodels, going in there, they've done some really good remodels down there. Like I said, that building has been remodeled before, and it actually has the firewalls all the way up to the top. That's why we probably didn't lose the whole downtown. But they're able to go in and make sure that a lot of the spaces that have been drilled through the walls and things over time are filled. And that's what John does when he goes and does his inspections, is he looks for those kind of things, and doesn't give them approval on their remodels or that until they fix those things. So, I think we're doing what we can, what the law allows us. But it goes back to education is really what we're looking at.
I don't want to put more burden on building owners or discourage businesses from being here, especially in the historic downtown. But it sounds to me like education, which you do through the inspection process, helps to address some of those. That's the third thing that I want to kind of focus on, if we can. You've had, I'm really impressed, I have to say, with the number of business visitations that you've done, your staff has done. And that's part of that educational outreach. are all the businesses within the city limits, is the goal to reach everyone on an annual basis? Or is it a rotation on those inspections?
It used to be. It used to be that we would do every business every year, an initial inspection. And that just wasn't feasible anymore with the amount of businesses we added and the bandwidth. And so, and that was doing them every building once a year was way above the standard for what most places do. So looking at that, and last year we changed it to a 3-year rotation. But again, it was based on the occupancy. So like, for example, the crews were out this morning doing, or this afternoon doing an inspection on the middle school. Schools, high occupancy, high risk, those are still done every year. The ones that probably are rotated out to where they're not as often are the smaller ones, the one room businesses, things like that. They're done. They've set up a schedule where it's for sure every 3 years. If not, there's something that changes in between. If there's a remodel or something like that, we'd go in sooner. But now it's based off of the risk of the building. So we just recently made that change last year in 2023 because we just weren't able to keep up with just this fire department staff. If there was a bigger building department staff, they might be able to, but having the firefighters do them, which I think is a big bonus. Like we said, being able to get out there to the community, being able to get into those buildings. So if we see him at 3:30 in the morning, it's not a surprise.
Right.
But it's just, it wasn't feasible to get every single one done every year.
Excellent. In some of the recurring themes that you've come across, I think it would be kind of interesting. How can the city do outreach to all the businesses? So, the 2 years in between of doing the fire inspections, and the city does an exceptional job, in my opinion, of with the public information officer, is if there's a way to kind of weave that in, so it's not we being intrusive, we are being helpful to help preserve buildings and businesses in a business friendly way. That would be kind of an interesting thing, and maybe it will help reduce the need for having more frequent inspections. Councilmember Cotton.
If there's turnover in a business, do you, and this is something I'm just not aware of, is there a period of time that they've applied for a permit, or after they've opened, that we go in for like the first inspection, or especially if it's changed the type of occupancy?
I believe that's all handled by the building department as a part of getting their initial business license. I off the top of my head, I don't know what that schedule is because it's done by Cooper, and what I don't know what the timelines are to that. It doesn't necessarily change our schedule. It could be moved up if it changed, if maybe a new occupancy comes into a building that was previously something else, and the previous inspection was 2 years ago, and now we have a new one. It's going to get caught when Cooper goes through and does their initial approval from the remodel. But as to a process of us getting in there sooner than later, I don't think there's a formal process that. It's more informal, where they invite us out. Maybe the crews will walk through, but that's something we can look at is maybe a more formal way of doing it. Again, like I said, we just started in 2023 doing the rotation. So there are going to be little tweaks to it. So I can, I have it written down on my list to talk about. Maybe there's an education piece as maybe we don't touch we don't see inside the building every 3 years, but maybe every year they get a flyer just reminding them about certain things. Maybe we take that to every business. That's something that we can, look at our stats for 2024, see how it worked, go into the new system, and then look for ways to tweak it.
So does the rotational basis, is it more based on the address? Or I know you mentioned the risk of the building and stuff like that, but and so Cooper processes that onto the fire department list for, he's done his here. It's here's a new business, seems to be a low risk type of a thing, and then you guys would add it in like in 3 years.
It's not based on the building, it's based on the occupancy. What's inside,
Okay.
what, like I said, the amount of people that visit it, it's based on the hazard class, which doesn't necessarily reflect on the building. It more reflects on the furnishings, the type of, chemicals that are used inside in manufacturing. It's based on the occupancy of what's inside and how many people visit it versus necessarily the building. That's a piece of it, but the majority of it's based on the occupancy of the building, who's inside.
And that gets passed on to the fire department by the building department.
It's a combination. Yeah, it's passed on by the building department. Yes, the captain that's in charge of the inspections is constantly in communication with Cooper. They look at it at the beginning of the year as to what, they figure out the list of what's going to be visited, and it's all they have it all. It's all in policy in the department. They're like I said, there's tweaks to it as we learn better ways to do it,
Right.
but it was all developed between the two of them.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Administration, Mayor, City Administrator, any comments or perspectives?
I think your comment about how do we keep them engaged when they're not being inspected? And so maybe there's like some safety information we can send out to merchants and examples of what the chief mentioned earlier about, extension cords and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think
just
that's
some
a great
safety
idea. I don't
tips.
think we thought about that, but as you mentioned, I think being able to hand out a flyer every year as a reminder for different things. I'm going to bring that up to the team.
And then the other issue, and that's Mr. Cooper's it being the building inspector, that I've heard rumblings of moving that closer to the fire department's purview, or is there any consideration or just closer communication between the building inspector and the fire department?
Yeah, Mr. Cooper's the building official,
Building official,
and he's
thank
also
you.
the fire marshal.
Okay.
And really, we've talked, and we're going to leave that alone for the time being.
Okay, there's other things around it, but that's helpful for those of us on the council having a better understanding of that relationship. So thank you very much. And he does an exceptional job too. We're very fortunate to have John Cooper staff. Anything else, Chief?
Not from my side.
Well done. Thank you. Oh, yes,
I
City
will-
Administrator.
I will add that we are doing development review committee meetings monthly now. So there's both chiefs attend them, and somebody for public works and everything. So the planning department is consistently updating all the departments on all the new happenings and going on and applicants, so that no one can say, we didn't know.
Okay, thank you. That's
That's a
incredibly
big help. I think
helpful.
that's a big step forward is, we don't necessarily see that because they all go through that department. So I think that was a great
Right.
idea to include us in some of those meetings to be able to help pass that on information on to the, the ones that don't necessarily see the administrative and the permits going back and forth.
Okay, well, excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. Great. Chief Lynch. Captain Horsey. You have the Breast Cancer Awareness Month coming up.
Yes, we do.
Tell us more.
So on October 1st, you're going to see us add a little bit of color to our uniforms. Traditionally, you'll see our black and gray patches and black uniforms. And we want to join the conversation about breast cancer awareness. I had intended to stand up here and read off the stats on how bad it is, which the stats are eye-opening. But for us, it became real a couple months ago when one of our officers or one of our employees, his sister was diagnosed and had to go through a pretty extensive surgery. And then a couple weeks later, a former Snoqualmie record specialist that we're still friends with the department was diagnosed, and she just finished her surgery. And then last week, my cousin was diagnosed with breast cancer. So it kind of it's a topic at the police station recently, and for bad, for bad timing and for bad luck for these people. But we want to do something to where we become part of the conversation. And if it means that we put pink patches on and it starts the public to talk about it, then we think that we've done, a little bit more than we have been doing, which is pretty much nothing. We have not stepped into that arena in the past, but we're doing it now. So I brought my model with me, and I told him he had to wear a jacket in August. He wouldn't wear it. I tried to get him to wear a sheet, and I was just going to pull it off. But, so go ahead and take that off. This is what the patches are going to look like. And for the most part, the men and women of the police department have been very receptive to doing this. It is a voluntary program. You don't have to. And of course, I think there's probably going to be some guys with huge arms and tattoos that say, oh, I'm not wearing pink, but I think they'll eventually come around when they see everybody else doing it. I think they're pretty cool. We've got some patches for you guys to take a look at and see. So we'll wear this on our uniforms from the beginning of October to the beginning of November. And we're able to put them on Velcro and be able to take them on and off. So that's kind of where we're moving forward on this. So I hope you guys like that idea. I think it's just another way for us to connect with the community. And if somebody sees the patch and comes up and we start talking about it, then maybe it'll jog their memory that they need to go to the doctor. Yeah.
Is there any plan of adding this for like a magnetic sticker to the patrol cars?
We were just looking at those. We have some ideas of, we've been researching and seeing what police departments and fire departments do. There are some departments that go all out and do a wrap for the car. They do a breast cancer awareness car.
I'm not sure that's in the budget.
No. Yeah, not from what I just learned about my budget. No, it's not. Yeah, there's no end to the ideas of how we can better this program, but this is a huge step for our department. We've never had anything like this. So I think it's going to be good for the community and for us.
Bold move.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Totally awesome. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The pink engine, Chief Bailey, the pink engine.
Do you want these back? Do you have enough?
Very nice. Thank you. All right. This next item goes over to Mr. Chambliss.
Yes, it
And that
does.
is the FAA restrictions at Snoqualmie Falls. We're very anxious to hear more from you, sir.
Okay, apologize, I don't have a visual aid. I'm stuck in a 4-hour budget meeting today and then a 30-minute meeting with legal counsel. But effectively, I have not been involved in too many direct conversations about this, but I believe the tribe is attempting to get a no-fly zone established around the falls for a period of an area of about 2 miles, I think, is what I remember.
Heard more than that.
Or is it more than that?
I've heard up to 5.
Up to 5 miles.
Yeah.
So there is a process, it's a federal process to go through with the FAA to establish a no-fly zone. I have done it in my past when I used to manage an airport for 12 years. And the best I was able to ever get was a temporary no-fly zone. And that was when I was doing an air show. And the standard size no-fly zone at that point was 5 nautical miles, which was a pretty big area. It was very difficult to get. I have contacted the tribe and provided them with an idea for an alternative way to maybe get what they want without having to fight that slog uphill the way that they have set out so far. If you look at the flight charts of Washington, you'll see that cities have a bright yellow area designated the city limits. And the chart for Seattle Center, which is our local chart, they're quite big, hasn't been updated probably in 20 years. So the yellow for Snoqualmie is just really the downtown area. Doesn't include any of the ridge. So what the yellow designates is a congested area. And what that tells a pilot is there's people there. And because there's people there, I can't fly any lower than 2,000 feet over that area. Now, the area that's not yellow, I can go down as low as 500 feet. But the yellow area, I have to stay up above 2,000 feet. So it is a relatively easy process to amend the chart, which I have done in the past when I managed my airport. And my recommendation to them was to amend the chart to show the true congested area, because they have the numbers of visitors at the falls, which is, if I remember correctly, one of the most congested areas in the state of Washington. So if we update that chart to show the congested area, aircraft have to be 2,000 feet over the nearest highest thing within a mile around them, which would put them higher than 2,000 feet because there's a mountain right there next to them. And I think that would be a much easier way for the FAA to give them what they want. I have communicated that to the tribe. They were very grateful that I provided them with that information. I have not heard back. I offered to help anytime they need it. And I would email you out the chart, but it's huge and it's too big.
To my ignorance, what do they have purview over? It's not just commercial jets. It's not small planes. It's anything that flies. Is that correct?
FAA, anything that leaves the ground.
So drones, that sort of
Correct.
thing. So are there certain things that the tribe is trying to address in that whole scheme, or that whole array of things that might be dangerous to the public, sort of thing?
My understanding, well, PSE already has drone restrictions around the area because it's a hydroelectric plant and they can do that. And I've seen the signs. My understanding is there's tourist operations that are going there and getting very low in front of the falls. I believe that congested area designation would keep them high enough to prevent them from being a nuisance. One of the difficulties with a 5 mile no-fly zone is there's actually an airport at the bottom of the falls that would be within that area. And so now you're going to have to establish arrival and departure procedures for that airport. And they're not going to be happy about that. Airplane operators are extreme type 1 or type A personalities, and they'll not like to be told what to do. So it just, I think there's a different way that's more effective and in the short term.
Dr. Cotton.
Well, two questions. One, does this apply for military aircraft as well?
Military aircraft usually have to follow the rules, but in times of emergency, there are no rules.
Or at like 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, flying down the river is just a training drill, or?
Depends on the circumstances, but that would probably apply to them also.
Okay. And my second question, is this something, or have any other tribes done anything similar?
I am not aware of
Okay.
it.
One other concern would be law enforcement, because King County does have a helicopter. Would it prevent them from doing the work that they need to do, or are they excluded from this?
It depends on the restrictions of the no-fly zone. If it's a TFR for like the president or whatever, It would be very difficult for King County to pilot. They would have to go through the chains of command through air traffic control, who would have to be in touch with the Secret Service to do that entry. As this isn't a presidential level TFR, I don't know who they would call other than air traffic control. They probably would have to contact air traffic control and declare that they're on a pursuit and they're transiting. There's areas called MOAs or military operation areas, which are giant invisible areas. Most of Nevada is a MOA. And there are ways to transit a MOA, otherwise they're a no-fly zone. But you have to get permissions and declare all that, and it's not quick. I don't think it would prevent it. It's just going to add more trouble to it.
Very well. Any other questions? I'm out of questions. All right. With that, is there any further business to come before us tonight or a subsequent night that we haven't addressed? Hearing none from the council, from the administration, I will call for our adjournment.
Move.
All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
It is 5:41 PM. And Clerk Garrett, would you make sure to include that both the mayor and city administrator were present tonight as well?
I will do that.
Thank you. Right, that's a wrap.